forward to a time in maybe not too distant future when we all feel comfortable getting back on a bus and doing a fun architectural road trip together. So thanks a lot, and look forward to tonight.
Thank you, Ted. So here's some upcoming programs and events. The ARE study group continues to meet online. The next session is May 3rd from 11 to 1 p.m. The focus will be on project planning and design. If you're interested, please contact Kisti at the AIA Columbus office. As I mentioned before, Carol Myers from Pella will be presenting fiberglass fenestration in sustainable commercial building course worth 1 HSW credit. The session is on May 7th at noon. You can RSVP online or contact Kisti at the AIA Columbus office, and it's free. So tonight's program, we're very excited about our discussion tonight. It's been planned since January for our Archway program participants and membership. And when the pandemic hit the US, our first instinct was to postpone the program. However, we soon realized that this topic was especially relevant in a time of uncertainty. So I want to personally thank former Mayor Michael Coleman for adapting his remarks to this new online platform. I want to introduce the co-chairs of our Archway program. Jennifer Rittler, AIA, is the secretary of AIA Columbus. She's a project architect at Moody Nolan and was recently named to the 40 Under 40 by Columbus Business First. Matt Toddy is the treasurer of AIA Columbus. Matt is an architect with Design Collective and was recently elected to the Young Architect Forum Strategic Vision Director at AIA National. And with that, I will turn it over to Jen to get the discussion started.
Great, thank you, Mike. Yes, we're excited for tonight's chat. And just a quick bit about Archway. This is a hybrid mentorship and leadership development program that we kicked off in 2018, and we're doing our second edition this year. We have 22 participants. We create mentoring groups of advisors and advisees. As you see in the picture here, this is one of our first sessions. And the next slide, here's a shout out to our advisees who are really glad that we have, these emerging design professionals in Columbus involved in the program. So this group of professionals, we participate in a series of 6 structured sessions for a duration of about 5 months. And it's a series of leadership programs that we go through. All right, so with that said, we'll kind of dive into our program, our fireside chat with Michael B. Coleman. And I'll just remind you kind of throughout the session, feel free to add your questions in the chat box. Yeah, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation where Matt will present the questions to Michael. So Michael B. Coleman, just a quick bio. He is the partner in charge of ICE Miller's Government Law Group. He also participates in the Internet of Things and real estate development groups. He is the former mayor and CEO of the City of Columbus, Ohio. As partner in charge of the Government Law Group, Michael leads ICE Miller's legal and professional team in Ohio in connection with the challenges and opportunities of creating partnerships between businesses, government, real estate development in central Ohio. Economic development and financing, government, regulatory matters, local, state, and federal administrative, legislative, government relations. So it's quite a bit of resume on there. So he served as the mayor of Columbus from 2000 to 2015, and he built Columbus's reputation as one of the best cities in the nation by building stronger, safer neighborhoods, creating jobs, and maintaining a high quality of life. Columbus is the 14th largest city in the nation and the largest city in Ohio and the fastest growing city in the Midwest. All right. So with that said, we'll kind of get into our chat here. We really see this as a kind of informal session. So we'll be, there we go, changing the screen there. So I'll be kind of prompting Michael through a series of questions, and he's kind of lead us through his career journey. And I think that's kind of how we would like to start. You know, tell us a little bit about your history and how you came to be in the spot you are now.
Well, it's a long journey. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, long journey.
Yes.
Actually from Toledo, Ohio. Went to undergraduate school at the University of Cincinnati, law school, University of Dayton. And went to the city. I had the best vibe for my first job out of law school back in 1980, long time ago. Some of you weren't even born then. And I had a vibe for the city. I worked here for a summer for the Attorney General's office. And I was offered jobs in Toledo, Dayton, DC, Cincinnati, Cleveland. And I chose Columbus because of that vibe. At that time, it was it wasn't that big of a city in 1980, but I felt I had this thing about the city that I said, you know what, I could make a good life here. And I've always wanted to make a difference in wherever I lived. And I felt I could make a difference in this city, maybe even more than other cities. So I worked in the Attorney General's office for a while, and then I worked in city council as a legislative aide of all things. A good friend of mine by the name of Ben Espy ran for city council, and he asked me to be his campaign manager, and lo and behold, I became his campaign manager. He won, and I went on over there back when I was 24 or something like that. And while there, you know, Ben was a lawyer, so his primary role was to practice law, and he put a lot of responsibility on me as a legislative assistant back in those days in my 20s. And he had me form a program, a youth program. He said, don't use any city dollars. Go out and raise every dollar for this program, and I want you to serve hundreds of kids in the summer. And I said, okay. So I went around businesses asking for money. One of the guys I went to was a guy by the name of Mel Schottenstein. And I'm sure many of you have heard of Mel. He, at that time, was among the most important people in our city. He was head of the chamber. He started a lot of organizations. He started a law firm. He started a company by the name of M.I. Homes as well. And he's the M of M.I. Homes. And he was actually the de facto leader of our community. And so I went to him and I said, look, I got a program here, my boss, a youth program here, and I'd like for you to invest in it. And I spent an hour with him telling him why he should invest in this program that my boss started. He pulled out a checkbook and wrote $67,000, gave it to me on the spot. And the next day I got a call. Said, you know, a guy that could talk me out of $67,000 in 1 hour needs to come work for me. And so he invited me to the law firm, and I sat there and interviewed, and they offered me a position, and I was the first African-American in his law firm, Schottenstein's Ox and Dunn. I think that was back in 1982 or something like that, 82 or 83, something like that. And I enjoyed practicing law. I was in business law, merger and acquisitions, real estate law. And, you know, as the first at that law firm, and one of the first few African-American lawyers with a major law firm in the entire city, it was a unique experience. But he put his arm around me and mentored me, very good to me. And over time, I became more interested in politics and government. and civic issues, and I rose my hand to serve on a vacancy at City Council in the community. And so it was Ben Espy's position. He went to the state Senate, and I was selected to serve on City Council. And I'm shortcutting all this. And then I became a leader in council. I ended up being the president of council very fast, very soon thereafter. Joined the ticket with Lee Fisher running for governor against a guy by the name of Bob Taft. Bob won, we lost. And then I ran for mayor that same year, and served mayor until December 31st, 2015. 16 years as mayor. About 3 years or so as 2 or 3 years as president of council, and on council for maybe 7 total years. And I enjoyed every bit of it. I love the city of Columbus. I've learned a lot along the way. And I will tell you a secret, that before I chose to go to law school, I had 2 ideas that I wanted to consider in my career. One was being a journalist. And I thought about that, and I looked up how much they make, and I crossed that right off the list. And then the other was to become an architect. And I thought long and hard about that. Do I want to become an architect? Because I like design. I didn't know I was good at it or not, but it seemed like a very cool career. But I was such an history, and what they told me had to be good at math. I said, forget that. We won't be doing architecture work. I like the design part of it. I didn't like the adding the numbers and trying to figure out what's, the angles and all that. And so I ended up going to law school, because I didn't want to make so little money as a reporter. Probably wasn't qualified ever to be an architect, wasn't good enough to be an architect. So I went to law school, which led me to where I am today. That's my journey, and I'm sticking to it.
No, thanks. I think it, well, a lot of us on the call here are design professionals, and we, find that really interesting that you contemplated that as a career path for yourself. So could you tell us a little bit about, how design and architecture are important in city life, and what you experienced as mayor, and even in your current position, how architecture impacts communities from your point of view?
Well, first of all, I think architects and architecture and design, most of the time it's a very thoughtful exercise. Very creative people are involved in it, and they are problem solvers. Problem solvers, underscored. Architecture and design to me is the possibility of society, and what it could be, what it should be, not what it can't be. And I've always admired that. And so while I was mayor, I got to know a lot of architects, and I viewed myself as a frustrated architect. I had that little thing in the back of my head, could I have ever been an architect? So I spent lots of time with architects that were engaged in civic projects, not just city projects, but civic projects. And so over time, it got to the point where if projects were going to get really approved by the city, because you got to get permits and all this stuff, you got to go see the mayor and just sit down and listen to them and hear them out. Don't do anything about it, but just hear about it. Just sit there and tell them what your project is and show them what you got. You'll have a good time with that. And so in my case, my best times as mayor during all those years, and mind you, I'm the longest serving mayor in the history of the city, one of the longest serving mayors in the country, were with design professionals and architects. I got up in the morning when I was meeting with an architect or someone designing a part of our community. I couldn't wait to meet with them to see what they had on their mind and how that was going to look and offer my ideas. And so I really think that design reflects the people of that community. It reflects the future of that community and the past. It's a part of the culture and the civic environment. And oftentimes it makes a statement of what people are thinking about during that time. And like I said before, they're problems. It's a problem-solving exercise. And I look at history and look at civilizations over centuries, and how architecture helped shape those civilizations. And those civilizations help shape architecture and design, and how they're so married to the hip, joined at the hip, together. They're always integral parts of each other. And so I get really excited about what the future is in design, and then I look at what's going on in the world. And those things always match up, always. And it's a statement of who we are as Americans, a statement of who we are in a nation and our city. You know, you can go into a city, never been there before, and the architecture and design of that city will tell you what that city's all about. And I will tell you that when I was a young man in Columbus, I was not impressed with the architecture of our city, because it didn't say a whole lot about, with some exception, there's always exceptions here and there. But part of a challenge of our city back in the 80s and 90s, who the heck are we? What kind of community are we? Who do we represent? What's our image? Well, I've always thought our image is who we think we are, and what we look like and what we feel like, and who we believe ourselves to be. But if you can't see it, touch it, feel it, it's hard to define who Columbus is. I think that has changed over time. And I hope that I had something to do with that over time. And one thing I know is that the architecture and design community of this city has had a lot to do with who we are today and how we will be viewed by those who've never been to our city, coming to our downtown, come to parts of our downtown, parts of our neighborhoods, and see the architecture, design, and planning, and land use, and landscape. They have an understanding of who we are. So I remember when I promoted the idea of having a convention, a national political convention to our city. Mm-hmm. And we chose, let's try to get the Democratic convention to our city. And they were not, we lost that narrowly to the city of Philadelphia. But I will tell you, the search committee back in whatever year that was, came to our city, and we showed them around to the stuff we knew was fabulous. They'd never been to our city. And they were knocked off their feet. When we made the application, we were last, dead last, of 20, 30 cities. By the time it was all over, we almost won that thing. I think it was 2012 or 2012, yeah. 2012, was it 2012? Was that right? 2016, one of those years. Yeah, I think it was 2016. That's when Hillary ran. Yeah, Hillary. That year, they were blown away by our city and the way we felt, the design, the architecture. We just laid it out for them, but architecture and design has a lot to do with it. And so going forward, I would love for our city to be even more recognized going forward. And there's this effort called Design City, sponsored by a major organization. I would love for us to be the winner of the Design City Award. It would take the architecture community, design community, to lead that charge. But I think it will set us apart from other cities. And one last point. When I was mayor, I was so enthralled with design and architecture that I decided that I wanted to have a department of architecture. And that was in, I think, 2008. And my idea was that no building built with city funds or city incentives could be constructed in the city of Columbus without an architectural review of the city, of the mayor's office. And we're so serious about it that I started looking for architects to be hired within that group. And so it wouldn't be just the buildings we'd be looking at, we'd be looking at manhole covers, park benches, art installations, doorknobs, that the city pays for, those things pay in our own buildings, and just to step it up a bit. Now, I didn't do it, and was only one reason I didn't finish that concept. The 2008 financial crisis, when the city went into, and everybody else, as we're doing right now, went into the longest and deepest recession since the Depression up until today. And the city, we lost $100 million in like 1 month, and I had to make cuts. And I had to cut something. I cut that effort out because I couldn't justify bringing it on while laying off and closing rec centers and all these other things. So I had dropped the idea, and I never got back to it. But I wish I had started the idea earlier. It'd be hard to cut something that was already there than cut something that wasn't there. Sorry for the long answer.
No, that's a great answer. It's really great to hear, how you appreciate the value of design in our communities. And, I hope as architects, we continue to express the value of design. So kind of stemming off your last point there about like the moment of today and how we are in a similar crisis as what we were in 2008 when you were mayor. So I want you to tell us a little bit more about crisis management in times like today, and what sort of techniques did you find that were, useful or valuable back in 2008 that you see that could be implemented today?
Well, one thing about crisis management, it's an art, not a science. And the art of leadership is not a science of leadership. It is not a specific formula that you read out of a book and say, if I do X, Y, and Z, I'm a leader. And because this book gives me the 10 things I got to do. And I never thought that was what leadership was about. It's more about art and about 3 basic principles, especially in times of crisis like we're in today. And I call them the 3 T's. Trust, transparency, and truth. So I'm going to talk about each one of those. Trust. People need to trust their leaders if you can trust them. And by gaining trust, you have to tell the truth. And sometimes, especially in today's world, truth is not a common practice. I don't see it very much, especially on the federal level. It used to be a standard, but now it's a rare thing. And so trust erodes when you don't tell the truth. And I think the people of America, the people of Columbus, they want to hear, what's the deal? What's the truth? Tell them the truth. What's going on? These are the facts. I'm not puffing them. I'm not downplaying them. This is the truth. If I tell you the truth, people are going to trust me to lead. And then transparency is tell them some people sometimes what they don't want to hear. That's part of the truth, and that's part of building trust. Transparency is not hiding anything. Shake it out, let them know about it, deal with it. I had a lot of crises as mayor. You know, I view my role as mayor back in the day was divided into three things. Let's see if I can remember them. The first third of being a mayor is making sure the trains run on time. We don't have any trains in Columbus, but making sure government works. The second third of being a mayor is dealing with the day-to-day crisis that people never hear about. 95% of the crises we had is when I was time as mayor, no one heard about it. It's the 5% that everybody heard about. And that's where the issue of trust, transparency, and truth comes up, especially. And then the final third of being mayor is thinking about tomorrow, the future. What's the city going to be like years from now, next week? Setting an agenda, not just for the day, but for tomorrow as well. But in each of those categories of making the city work, dealing with crisis, the 1/3 dealing with crisis, and the 1/3 setting the vision, truth, transparency, and trust are the fundamentals in each of those categories. Without it, you're ineffective in any of those categories. So today, we're faced with one of humanity's biggest crises. And I think the leadership, whether it be state, local, or national, they have to continue to tell the unvarnished truth, whether we want to hear it or not. Be transparent about it for people to trust that we're going in the right direction. Not seeing it at the federal level, except for Dr. Fauci. I trust him. I think he's telling me the truth, and I think he's been transparent. I think Governor DeWine is doing a fabulous job. Very proud of him. I think Mayor Ginther's doing a fabulous job. But I can't say that's the case around the country. And I think it's bad when we can't have those three principles apply, especially in a time of crisis. It makes our future much more difficult to face when we don't know or we don't trust our leadership.
Oh yeah, thank you for sharing that insight. So is this, would you say your 3 T's are a preview into your future book?
I'm going to write a book one day. I thought about during this downtime here, not really downtime, but this period. But I've been actually pretty doggone busy. But I wouldn't mind writing a book. I really wouldn't. I have a good friend of mine. He's one of my dear friends. His name's Will Haygood. He's written a number of, I think, 7 or 8 books now. He wrote the book and the screenplay, The Butler. He wrote a book on Thurgood Marshall. They're all right here behind me, all stacked up. They're all autographed. And he dedicated one book to me. He gave me the first one off the press. But Will Haygood is probably the best biographical writer in the nation in modern times. And I've been talking to him like, how do you write a book? One thing I don't want to do is to write a book that I see other politicians and former elected officials write about. This is what we did on October 1st. I walked down the hallway and turned left, and I took a piece of paper, and it was boring. Can't get through them. And who the hell cares anyway about the day-to-day life of Michael Coleman? What I thought I might write a book about were some of my unique experiences that apply to other communities and areas as well. Using my experiences almost as anecdotal stories about things, So I thought I might have a chapter about Barack Obama, about our internal relationship. Some revealing things, kind of funny. Some of the things are funny, some are not so funny. That I could write about that relationship in a chapter. That I often tell some of those stories, and the more I think about them, the more good stories there are about him and his relationship to the city and to the country. How he's just a regular guy that likes basketball, likes to hang out, likes to talk stuff, play the dozens, laugh, regular guy. So yeah, I've thought about writing a book, and I might still do that. I'd like to do it. I might write about architects, how design, a chapter how design is important to a city. Architecture is important to the city, and use some examples. Bob Leversich, if he's on the line, he's probably
yes, he's here.
Okay. Yep. He helped design and build the Michael B. Coleman governmental building. Gosh darn him. But a guy like him has had a tremendous impact on the city. And, there could be a little anecdotal. I got some anecdotal things I can say about him. It might be a tell-all book. I could tell it all, Bob. You'd be in trouble. Just kidding.
Well, we'll all wait for those signed copies, and we'll be lining up for them. So I see we're getting some good questions in the chat box. So Matt, whenever you're ready, we can start to bring some of those out.
It's actually a great segue because Bob had a really good question that was echoed by a few other people. So I'll go ahead and read Bob's question. You've spoken often about the importance of our downtown as both the economic engine for the region and as everybody's neighborhood. under your leadership, our downtown was transformed. How do you think we're doing right now, and what do you think are the next steps?
I think we have a good foundation and building blocks. I think right now we have a lot of development interest. That's good. There was a time we had none, zero. Nobody wanted to do anything downtown when I was getting started. I had to beg developers to build residential, and they didn't beg them, but try to get them to do something that they didn't normally do. And now downtown is now hot, and that's good. We need to complete the Saddle Peninsula. I think, frankly, we need to lean more into design, how it looks, how things look, how they feel, how they represent our community, what our gathering places are. So I think we're doing okay right now. I'm worried about this period we're in terms of this COVID period we're living in, and I don't know what's the impact on the progress that we've made downtown. I just don't know. We were talking about earlier how we think COVID is going to impact how architecture and design looks in the future, because we may have a vaccine for COVID-19 in a year, but we don't have a vaccine for COVID-21 whenever that comes along. And there'll all be airborne viruses, I suspect. So what does that mean on how we gather, where we gather, how buildings look? What kind of apartments are built? All those things are questions I can't anticipate now. I think our future is good. I think if we get through this COVID-19 thing all right, I would like the architecture community to take more interest in organizing yourselves in the city on how important design is to a city government. I'm not sure elected officials understand that, but it'd be good to start educating them that it is important. Design is important in the ultimate character of a city because it says who we are, defines who our meaning as a city. So it would be wonderful if the architecture community could take the lead in positioning the city as a design city and making it a community project with business support, be our Olympics.
That's great. Another question, Mayor, from Terry Umberger is, as architects, what should we be doing to make an impact, make a difference in Columbus?
Well, I just told you one, and that is to translate what you do to how it impacts the character of a city and a community and a neighborhood, and merge those together and take the lead on that. It's not about a contract. It's not about a building. It's about a culture, the culture of design and translating it and moving it into kind of what's important in city spaces. Understand that there always needs to be, I think, an emphasis of this great career in architecture and design in the minority community. There are not enough those in the minority community to go into design and architecture because they're not exposed to it in high school and in college, and they don't think about it as an opportunity. So I think diversifying the population of professionals to make it more diverse, I think is an important thing that this group could do, and putting it on the plates of consideration of the civic leadership and the elected leadership, with mentorship opportunities in distressed neighborhoods. Who knows, you might come out with some of the greatest architects and designers in the world that are sitting someplace in some neighborhood now that has no idea what an architect is or design is, but have these great visions. And I would love to see this group focus on the diversity of the profession, racial and gender diversity, and other diversity of the profession. And it's like the law, nothing against this, white guys, but a lot of white guys in the law. And the same with other professions. We need to diversify those professions. So that's number two. Those are the two big things, I think, that this group could do. And in doing that, it's going to really mean you have to reach out to neglected neighborhoods, work with our school system, public school system, figure out how you get in front of a diverse population to join you in the ranks along the way, whether scholarships or, when I was mayor, we formed a group to have more engineers. There were not enough minority engineers in the city, still aren't. But I raised money in the private sector, and we used to give out scholarships and job opportunities in departments, in my various departments in the city, where college students could work paired up with engineers, civic engineers and mechanical engineers, whatever, that work in the city. And then some of them would give them, scholarships for school if they went to school for that purpose. That program doesn't exist anymore, but it was good while it lasted. Was not sustained.
Those are great thoughts, and certainly encouraging, because it is a challenge. It is diversity in our profession is a monumental issue, and one that this program in particular, the Archway program and AIA Columbus, both are working towards making progress on that front. So it's great to hear that the encouragement on that one, Mayor. That's great. Changing gears a little bit, question from Mike Valla, our current president. Do you have any thoughts on how to create more affordable housing in the city of Columbus?
Yeah, there's a great effort going on now to create affordable housing. It's all about cost of development, cost of materials, and affordable housing needs to be subsidized. Simple as that. In order for housing to be affordable, it needs to be subsidized. It's not hard to understand. It's just hard to do, and it's expensive. So when I was mayor, I remember on the west side of Columbus, well, I started an organization called Affordable Housing Trust Corporation, and I funded it through bed tax. I had a bed tax that, people come to town, they pay their rent, and a piece of the rent at the Hilton or whatever hotel was spun off into this Affordable Housing Trust Corporation. They created a chunk of money every year, and it used that to help finance and subsidize housing, affordable housing in the city. By the time I left, we had 11,000 housing units completed through that system, as well as other systems we created. But I remember several times on the west side, the Affordable Housing Trust Corporation, we wanted certain streets on the west side, we wanted to bring it back, that crime, all kind of stuff going on. And so we invested in building up the infrastructure, the streets, the sidewalks, the curbs, and water connections, all that stuff. And we took old rundown homes or vacant lots, and I don't have the right numbers, but it cost $300,000. I'm thinking maybe 250,000, whatever it was, to build a house of the size in that neighborhood of the other houses in that, the size of the other houses in the neighborhood. And we'd sell them for $100,000, $125,000, $150,000. Boy, the press came down on me like it was like, what the hell are you doing? You're building houses at $300,000, how much it costs, or $250,000, whatever it was. You're selling it for $150,000. How can you do that? I got blistered, but I kept doing it. And it was no secret. It cost this much to build it. We're selling it to you for this much. And affordable housing requires subsidy in America. How much subsidy do you have? How is it going to be, utilized? How is it going to be leveraged for other financing? Affordable housing is a financing question. Now, having said that, affordable housing doesn't have to look like junk. Affordable housing can be beautiful. It can have great design features. It doesn't have to look like a slab with 4 walls and a front door. It can look better than that. And that needs to be thought through as well. And I know there's been some efforts, I think I remember Moody Nolan having put together an affordable housing unit. It may have been in Linden, I'm not sure. Jen, do you know?
Yeah, that's correct. It's called the Legacy House Project in Linden.
Yeah, Legacy House Project. Nice, beautiful thing, and affordable.
Mhm.
That kind of creative thinking needs to take place. So affordability and design should match. And I think what's going on, the affordability means you got a shack. And I don't agree with that. So there's lots of ways to have affordable housing. It's all about the financing and how much resources you have for financing. Mayor Ginther has been very good about this. He has a number of efforts going on. It's frankly critical in the city of Columbus that we have affordable housing, because we do not want to be like San Francisco. What is going on in our city is that we have lots of people migrating to the city of Columbus. Housing prices are going up, like in San Francisco. In Silicon Valley, the housing is just too expensive. It has gotten out of control. That could happen in Columbus as well if we're not careful. And so when there was this effort to attract Amazon to Columbus, remember that, guys? Remember we were trying to get Amazon to relocate his headquarters here? And I don't remember all the numbers, but I think it was like 50,000 new employees overnight. What I was worried about was, well, if we want it, which would be good, where's everybody going to live? How are the prices of the housing going to go up? When you have 50,000 people means 50,000 employees means 250,000 people. You've got the kids, the wives, the husbands, their dogs, their cat, all coming to the city of Columbus in a very short period of time. Where are they going to go? It would have been a dilemma that we've never faced before. The benefit of having all these new jobs, which is good, all these new people, which is good. But what's going to happen with the housing problem, traffic issues, density issues, affordability? So part of me says, whew, glad it didn't happen. The other part says, man, I wish we had Amazon here. We could have figured that out. We could have figured that out. Especially if we could put it at the fairgrounds.
We like a challenge.
Yeah.
It would have been fun to figure out for sure.
Yeah, it would have been fun.
I know we're past 6 o'clock. I got one last question. I'd love to get a response from you before we move into our next phase here. And Hannah Awarie of the AIA Columbus Board of Directors asks, as architects and problem solvers, are we missing out in any particular city committees or councils where our skills and design experience could be beneficial?
I don't know the real answer to that, but it's probably you are missing out. To give an example, we just talked about affordable housing. There's about a dozen committees going on with that here and there. I don't know how many architects or designers are on those committees, but should be, to advance the notion of affordable housing doesn't have to be schlock housing. It can be well designed, very thoughtful, and here's ways to make it even more affordable. Designers and architects can figure out ways to make buildings more affordable as well. They're part of they're problem solvers. And so I think there's probably a lot of very key, important areas, like committees and groups that the architecture and design community should be a part of that maybe you're not, that you should be on.
It's good. Another challenge for us, I think, to overcome. Any final thoughts?
No, let me just say that I have a great appreciation of who you are and what you mean. to a city like Columbus, and how meaningful you could be to the future of our city, very meaningful to the past. You know, City of Columbus has had a history of tearing down buildings. That slowed down a lot, and I think that's good. But the reason why those buildings get torn down is because they're not used. And our culture does not appreciate, well, historically, in the 80s and 70s especially, maybe even the 90s, did not appreciate the importance of older buildings. So they weren't used. They weren't reused. And when older buildings aren't reused, they end up being torn down eventually. And that's a sad part of our history. And I remember, I wasn't in Columbus at the time, but you know, when I think about some of our history, some of the bad things that it always is talked about in terms of the negative part of the history of the city of Columbus was when the train station was torn down back in the 70s. Mm-hmm. I think there was saved a archway that's now in the Arena District, really outside my office. So yeah, architecture and design is important to us. But during that period, man, we're just tearing stuff down. And the architecture and design community needs to be part of the community dialogue of our culture, where we're going, and play a role in maybe non-traditional areas, and raise your hand to participate in community service, where your points of view can be made known and brought to the forefront early on in the process. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity to talk to everybody in these unique circumstances. This is a very challenging time for all of us. I think that going forward, we need to adapt as a society to a new reality that's is not real familiar to many of us, including me. I'm forced to adapt myself. Me working from home is like big deal. You know, I had a major transition problem. And to move from my office, where I lived practically, and I had a lot of support staff to help me do what I do. And I come home, I don't have support staff. I'm the support staff. But it forced me to learn things that I heretofore relied on others to do. And I'm a better person for it, probably a better lawyer, better person altogether for it. But I think moving forward, my dad said to me, and he's deceased now, but he said, you know, one of the most important qualities of human nature is to persevere through tough times. It's not how far you fall, it's how fast you get back up. And perseverance has been my personal theme over the years, because I've had a lot of challenges over the years, but it's always about coming back and being stronger from that experience. So I say to all of you that are on the line, persevere. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Coleman. That was, thanks for sharing your time, and certainly an inspiration to us all. Really excited to continue this conversation as a profession and as an organization here in Columbus. I want to thank our national audience tonight. Thanks for tuning in and being a part of the Archway program and AIA Columbus's monthly virtual chapter meeting. I want to invite all the